Week in Lumber with the Matt Beamer and the Greg Riley. Matt Beamer, Hampton Lumber Sales. Greg Riley with Sitka USA. When we break down the funk and the excitement in the lumber market, I think this is the first get together because of some technical issues in the last week or so. Looks like Greg, you've got all your screens open. Beamer, you're hunkered down. Let's jump right into it and chat about if somebody just dropped out of the stratosphere and landed on the Earth today and hadn't traded lumber in the last month, what would they have returned into orbit to find?
Prices up $400 to $500.
Yep.
Yeah, we're up 50% in the last 2 weeks and 100% in the last 4 weeks. We doubled.
Yeah. So it seems to be everything's the same but always different, right? So last year at this time, and I think Greg, you actually pointed it out to me about 3 weeks ago. The actual move started in 2020. The 2021 move started almost to the week of where we started this one off. Does that make sense? Or pretty darn close. Let's not put the surgeon mask on here, but literally in 2020, the move started in late Q4 that took us all.
Yeah, well, I mean, Ash, if you remember what happened last year is in COVID, the market rallied up until the middle of September, and then in 8 weeks fell 50%, and it was like late October, and then the market started to grind higher from there, and. I guess the only difference that I can see this year is that the market topped when market topped in May, it fell 75% in 13 weeks, bottomed in the middle of August, and one of the things we talked about a few weeks ago was, hey, the market had moved up during a period of seasonal weakness. And so as we move to seasonal strength, what was that going to do? And, we've, since the November expiration, we've gone ballistic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Matt, do you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I was kind of curious. I figured the market was going to be fine. I don't, there's nothing in our conversations or nothing that I've been able to see in the cash market for the last 90 days that made me feel like the market wasn't fine. It was trading fairly normally and it had an upward bias to it. And we all talked about how long term we thought, hey, the market's in a bull pattern, and I've been acting as though we're in a bull pattern. So I feel good about the market, but I also was really surprised by the trajectory and the speed with which we changed directions and the amount. Like we're moving 100% in 3-4 weeks. These are big numbers. These are humongous moves, right? These are the kind of moves that we never saw in our career. So I was talking.
You get more price action in a week now in lumber than we used to have in a year.
I've had days where I raised the price $100 on something from the day before and sold it. At what?
And you were cheap.
Whatever. I just have to. I have to defend myself. Like I can't just sell inventory at last week's price when the price that I have to pay is going up $100 a day, also, right? So, it's like you have to price your lumber based on your replacement cost. That's just the way a commodity works.
Replacement cost is tough to put your finger on these days, though, isn't it, Matt?
It is.
It's
actually, I've heard a lot of people complain recently about not being able to find what they want to find, or I'm more like in the Greg mode from last April, May, when you said, hey, the market's tight, but you can still buy lumber. You just have to pay for it. I can still buy lumber. I just have had to pay more for it, right?
It's a great point, Matt.
Every day, I buy something every day.
I mean, absolutely. I bought 14 cars of lumber in the last 24 hours. So, I mean, there's still some liquidity for me to go out there and find what I need to find. But getting back to my original point here, I was talking to a builder friend of mine, and this was interesting. This is something I hadn't even thought about. But I asked him, hey, are you, the builder people, like going to back away from the party now that the price of lumber's back in that 4-digit range? It's 1,200, 1,300, 1,400 delivered to you. These are the kind of numbers you're facing. He's like, no. And I said, really? And he said, nope. is because they have plans for fiscal year 2022, and these plans all kind of start now, right? They gotta keep the ship moving. They can't just stop the ship in the middle of the ocean and just say, okay, we're not going to go to port. No, they got to get to port. So their version of getting to port is they got to start these jobs so they can complete them sometime in the second or third quarter and get paid for it, get their money back. So they're going to keep going.
Big builders are never going to be the ones that push away on price. If we remember what happened last year was the people that pushed away were the big custom builders, multifamily jobs, and home center business. And it was ultimately the drop in the home center business that allowed all that extra supply to be available to the rest of the market. And that's ultimately what tipped us last spring.
Well, right now, I can tell you the big builders and the home center business and the retailers and the distributors and basically every facet of our business right now is like
everybody's buying.
Full steam ahead.
Everybody's buying.
Yep. Full steam ahead. We need it. We'll pay for it. Just send it. Here you go. Here's a PO. So nobody has the brakes on right now, right? Nobody has the brakes on.
So Matt, are you working part time now? Only 14 cars in the last 24 hours? Like that's and Greg, like, well, that's all you bought? Like Greg, like what about you, man? I mean, are you? I'm taking the over. Am I taking the under on this one or the over?
I bought a truck this morning.
Okay, all right. I was just wondering. I mean, look at. Doing anything, investing, looking at overvalued, undervalued, the sense I'm getting out there from people is now we're never going down, right? This is like Bitcoin plus Ethereum plus Dogecoin plus Litecoin, everything, and lumber is is now. When you go to Robinhood and I bring up my cryptocurrencies, lumber is in there. It looks like because of the volatility, right? So, home builders, multifamily, Greg, you and I know, like, so all of a sudden I'm getting messages, emails, conversations from the same people that contacted me in April and May of last year, multifamily people that I haven't heard from for the whole year. Hey, can you help me buy lumber? Some people in the supply chain still don't even know lumber's going up yet, right? The ones that are really far on one end, they're obviously seeing it now. So multifamily people, I've heard from them. I heard from a guy yesterday. He bought Southern Pine trucks, 20 trucks in beginning in November from a mill. The mill's now telling them that they're going to be late shipping on them. These are $400 trucks, right? So I'm guessing there's some stuff like that going on where some people are getting shipped around. I mean, there's odd stuff that happens in this market, right?
Right. Yep, for sure.
So
I'm curious, Greg, and you might get a little. I'm still trying to find out, from internally whether we're going to see the multifamily guys sort of back away from the table. I haven't heard anything yet. I don't have any definitive yes or no answer on that. But you guys are tied into that also, Ashley, with your platform, and Greg. Greg has some experience in that regard. So,
well, I mean, the one thing that I saw, Matt, was that from August until a few weeks ago, a heavy demand from multifamily. I think we talked about it, where contractors had rented warehouses and wanted to get all of their product for their jobs for 2022 in place. And I mean, there's probably and we know that there's reloads across the Southeast that are full of lumber for multifamily jobs. And
right. So are they going to be able to afford to go and buy more lumber at double the price and for May?
Well, what I suspect will happen is what always happens with multifamily is that things are always a little slower than they think. It gets dragged out. Like I said, there's a lot of lumber in place because all of us that are involved in that business have, with the volatility over the last few years, have made sure that lumber's all covered. Right. And so we pulled a lot of demand forward over the last 6 months in putting that wood in position. Now, well, guys, right now, I mean, most of the stuff I'm quoting now is for the second quarter or third quarter of next year. budget numbers. And no, they're not going to buy any of that lumber at these current prices.
Okay.
That's so, Matt. You touched on one thing. Home centers blowing and going now. Is their outtake? Are they at the max outtake right now, where they're pulling, or do
No.
they still have? They're not. I mean,
Well, no. I mean, this is not the time of year where Home Depot and Lowe's and Menards are blowing through like cars and cars and cars of studs. They're building inventory right now, right? This is the time of year that you look at the home center business is very similar to the seasonality of the treater business. And so if you have any familiarity with the treater business, they tend to use the wintertime as sort of a let's invest and let's go find some of these specialty products that we need to get when the mills are kind of slower. Historically, this is a slower time of year. And so mills will think about making 5-quarter decking on a custom request, or they might want to sell a run of, Ponderosa pine to a treater in the Midwest in December, January, February, because it gives them something to do. And the treaters have always historically wanted to buy lumber and store it through the winter. And so typically Home Depot and Lowe's and Menards and all the home center people that sell the over-the-shoulder crowd, they tend to use the winter time and the dead of summer to get their inventories sort of in line with their future expectations, where they're actually busiest in the fall and then the spring, right? So
yeah.
just think about your behavior as a human being. Like Ashley, are you going to go build a fence in December in Chicago? Probably not. Are you going to build one in May or June? Yeah, probably.
But I will say that we had wind the other day. A section of my fence blew down, and I called the company. I go, we just want to let you know we're out 20 weeks. I said, I have like a couple of sections that need in a post maybe that gets to be replaced. You go, well, maybe we can squeeze you in sooner. I go, maybe.
Hey, why don't you just hire me? I'll fly over there. $8,000. I'll do it for you.
Housing starts tomorrow for November. We're forecasting marginal higher numbers, and we'll want to watch permits pretty carefully. But we're in a run rate of 1.5 million ish starts, which is certainly supports the high prices of lumber that we have. One thing I did want to say is builder sentiment came out today, was lower. One of the complaints, obviously, from the builders is that the increase in tax rate on Canadian lumber seemed ill-timed.
Yeah, I think it's a footnote in history at this moment.
So
a year from now, they'll be talking about dropping the rate, right? I mean,
so
right.
Look at there's
and the prices will be low.
There's a lot of information that goes out there, and the way it gets consumed by the general public. And I talked about this on a video call I had yesterday. A week or a month and a half ago, BC released that whole conversation about cutting, and if everybody first read that, everybody thought that there was never going to be another stick cut in British Columbia starting that day, right? That wasn't the reality of it. Is there some certain things that they're working through? Sure. And then we had the double whammy with all the weather that hit southern BC, and the story that goes through the cup and the string to all of the traders out there was, gentlemen, there'll be no more shipping out of southern BC for the next X amount of months, right? Are we worked through all those issues, Matt, as far as shipping goes?
Yeah, we're not all the way through, but we're beginning to see, let's say if you view it as like what inning we're in the baseball game, we're probably
you got in front of me, man. Yeah.
We're like in the 5th or 6th inning here in terms of getting the tracks repaired and getting wood flowing into the direction that it needs to go. So the way that really affected the market was it isolated the Western United States. So if you were a contractor yard or retail yard or distributor that buys Canadian product in Utah, Colorado, Arizona, Nevada, California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana, mainly the Western states, from Colorado west, you were cut off. You couldn't get that material to come through the old B-call lines that where Sumas, Washington and New Westminster, how the railroad routes those cars right across the border up in Washington. they couldn't connect to the BN or the UP in the United States because of that washout, because of the flooding. Now that's been repaired, and they're starting to see a trickle of cars. I know like Mountain View Reload in Sumas is not flooded anymore, and they've been able to ship some wood again. And so you're starting to see movement south, but it's only a trickle compared to what it normally would be. And it's going to probably be like that for a while. Then you have the trucking issue, which is probably a secondary problem, but a lot of trucks have been, absorbed. The demand for trucks out of Canada shot through the roof, right? And so they have like an order file of trucks that are sold and waiting to get moved down here. Guys paid an extra $50-$60 just to get their lumber moved out of Canada across the border to ship it down to Colorado or Phoenix or something like that. So that's all happening as we speak. But in a month or two, it'll be ancient history, and nobody will talk about it anymore.
So
it'll be probably some other problem, like the CN's got trains frozen to the tracks.
Well,
my question, Matt, is in those Western markets that felt like, whether it was wood that they had on order that they couldn't get, or wood that they didn't feel like they could buy from their normal suppliers. So was there a level of double buying of inventory, or do you think they just had to go and buy it from other regions?
Well, they did everything they could to just buy extra lumber. So they bought some dry, they switched species. They switched over to hemp fir. They switched over to Doug fir. They bought any ESLP or whitewood that was available. As long as it fit the building codes of their region, they were, like in Colorado, they're not buying ESLP. It doesn't match their building codes. But they can buy either hemp fir or Doug fir out west. It does match their building codes, right? So in Phoenix, the same thing. They're using primarily spruce. Well, they can easily switch over to hemp fir or Doug fir if they need to. They just normally don't because it's more expensive. Mm-hmm. But that's what's happened here in the last, month. This is one of the reasons why it's been really hard to get a quote on Western lumber, especially from people like Hampton. I know we got a lot of mills, right? But we have a lot of people that we've already been doing business with for years and years and years that are just clamoring for more lumber. Let alone the new guy that just calls in for the first time in 10 years. He's not even getting a quote.
What's your mill shipping files right now at your mills? I mean, I'm assuming that your inventories are low and you have a pretty solid shipping file well into January.
Yeah, you remember we had this discussion a month ago at the beginning of this rally. You asked me, or I think Ashley asked both of us, if mills were more interested in order files or price. And at the time, you and I both said order files, right?
Because for sure, you did.
That's the mill's defense against lower prices is an order file. So the mills entered this market with a mindset of, hey, let's get ourselves out 2, 3, 4 weeks, and they've stayed in that. They've stayed in that because of this extra demand. They haven't even had to try very hard to keep their order files out there lengthy because the customers just keep calling in waves. And no matter what price we put on something, I mean, we just put some studs out this morning, a handful of studs. I'm sure, Greg, you could do this exercise with your mill if you wanted to. Go list a couple of cars of studs, 2x492s at some high price, and watch 10 minutes later, they'll be gone. Somebody will buy them somewhere, right? Because they just need the material. So order files are still lengthy. Logging in the Northwest isn't any great fun right now. It's super wet and cold and nasty out here. So it's not going to help the mills. Production, this is the time of year where production is kind of squirrely in the West. You can get these snowstorms and floods and just weird things happen in production side. Production on Oregon, Washington lumber is going to be at the mercy of the elements here for the next couple of months, right? So
well, I mean, there's a reason. That's the reason why
it's long order files.
It's the reason why first quarter North American lumber production that's the lowest production quarter of the year. It's also why we typically have a seasonal high in price that time.
So, Matt, you mentioned the baseball game theory. So one thing we're going to see is unabashed information coming out about everything bullish because the market is good. I'm guessing now the long CME cartel, those 7 individuals will be pushing their narrative to people because that's what they do. But when people are now looking with everything that you guys know, how much spec wood are you buying in here that it's going to ship in a month personally to get on? And if you're a buyer sitting there right now in 2 Montana that's got plenty of inventory, 90 days of inventory, and you think that you want to build 180 days of inventory, or maybe start buying for the second quarter? And I know the answer is if you got it sold at a profit, buy it. But what if people have everything covered, they have sold at a profit and want to buy extra at these numbers? What's your advice there?
Well, Ash, we work for a guy that used to always tell us the same thing: is you buy when people want to sell, and you sell when people want to buy.
So true.
Once we get into 4-digit numbers, the odds of prices staying in 4 digits for any extended period of time, and the higher 4 digits, the lower the odds of that are.
But it's different this time, Greg.
Hey, listen, it's one of the things I'm going to say is, interestingly, we've done a couple of polls in the last month or so, and
damn, were those things predictive, man?
We did. It is. It's actually amazing. All you have to do is look at where everybody thinks, and it's not going to be that. It's absolutely classic contrarian. But to that point, the poll says that we're going back to the old highs because that's what nobody thought then.
Yeah,
right.
I bet that if I do a poll next week, that those numbers will flip, and probably the majority will feel that we are going to the highs.
I don't really have an opinion at this point. I mean, my answer to your
bullshit!
question,
you bought 14 cars today. You got an opinion?
Well, I'm gonna talk about that. That's exactly
that's bullshit.
That's exactly what I was.
I know you love me, man.
No.
Greg, every time you swear, our view count goes up, man.
My opinion.
Let's go.
I mean, there's 2 questions here. One is, how am I acting and how am I behaving right now? What are my thought process and how do I decide to buy lumber or not buy lumber, right? Well, that's real simple. If I have people trying to buy lumber from me every single day and I can buy for less than what I can sell it for, then I'll keep buying, right? When I have to start paying a premium to what I can sell for, then I put the brakes on. I'm like, yeah, maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe that's a little too risky now. But as long as I can still buy lumber at a price that is less than what I'm selling for, then I'll probably maintain at least a tiptoe. I'll keep my toe in the water, right? And then if the market flips over on me, at least I'll have a basis with which to hedge. At that point, if I wanted to. But in general, that's how I view my decision whether to keep buying lumber or not. The pace of business at my desk, and whether or not I can replace material at below what I'm selling for. Okay, that simple. But then in the long run, you're asking me to make a decision for 4 or 5 weeks out. If I was going to buy some lumber from a mill today for like week of January 17th or January 24th, I wouldn't probably I probably wouldn't, honestly, unless I had some guaranteed sale. Let's say I had a sale tied to print, and I could just fluff it off to the mill and say, here, I'll give you this print plus freight, and just take it. Then there's no risk. I'm just locking in a profit. I just don't care what the price is at that time. But would I cash buy lumber for 5 weeks out right now? It'd have to be cheap. It'd have to be a pretty good deal for me. I'd rather buy that lumber and pay more for it and get it sooner, right?
Here's a question for you. Somebody comes to you and says, I will buy for the second quarter 20 cars at 2x4, 104 and 5/8 at $1,200 1,000 delivered Atlanta. Do you take it short, or what do you do? Or do you say no?
I wouldn't take it short right now. I wouldn't do that.
Well, I mean, fair value for that is probably that's not far off. I mean, $1,250.
I've done this for a while.
$1,250, $1,275 is fair value right now.
All right, $1,300. They tell you they want 10 cars for the second quarter. Do you take that short?
I don't take anything short, Ash, because I'm saying I can manage the risk on that. I mean, I take that business because I can manage the risk.
It's basically you cover it and put it on the ground. You can't, because you can't manage that with futures right now.
Yeah, you can. I mean, you're at current March and May futures, you can cover that. I mean, the basis says that's fine. one of the things that I wanted to talk about a little bit was we talked, a month or so ago when November expired, we talked about, the huge premium to January and what the basis opportunities were. And really that was from the middle of September until November. And interestingly, the board has kept those premiums. I don't know, Matt, where do you peg Western Spruce 2x4 randoms at today, price wise?
From the sawmills or
Yep,
from
sawmill.
inventory?
Sawmill.
I don't know. Honestly, it's a discount to the print. We've been able to sell at closer to the futures price, but I know that you could buy 2 and better like below $1,000 here recently in the last couple days. So
yeah, well, I heard a guy sold a bunch of cars at $900 on and I mean,
right. We've sold at 1,100. We sold at 1,100 ourselves out of Babine a couple days ago. Maybe it was yesterday. But I know you could buy $900 lumber, $950 lumber. I mean, I bought wood that was on the ground for like the equivalent of $925, 12 and longer.
You look at that, and you can, at $925 minus $1,100, that's $175. That's better than some basis trades that I put on, earlier.
Yeah, no, that's a great. Hey,
there's $150 to $200 basis right now if you can find the right deal, right?
Somebody just asked a great question here. I want to make sure, because we're talking to so many different types of buyers and so many different types of people that they understand what we're saying. And again, we're not here to tell anybody what to do. These are just our opinions. Kevin Otto asked a question. If this rally is going to keep going, why not buy for 5 weeks out? Again, Kevin, that question is a great question. I'm not sure if you mean to buy a 5-week order file, if you have business sold, or if you're just speculating on it. Because
let me answer that.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I can answer that really easily. If let's define 5 weeks out. To me, 5 weeks out is when the mill's going to ship it. It's another 5 weeks for me to receive that material in my inventory down in Texas. So we're talking that's literally 10 weeks.
Yeah,
that's almost a quarter's length, right? That's like a quarter of the year for me to speculate on the price of lumber. And we're not even good at forecasting lumber a month ahead, like in this business, right? I mean, like that's about as far out as my crystal ball really works, is probably a month, 3 months or 2.5 months. I don't really like to gamble on things that are that far out in front of me. At that point, it would have to be tied for me to do that. I'd have to tie it to futures, like Greg said. I'd make a basis trade out of it, but I wouldn't just buy it for my normal business. So we're talking two different concepts here. My normal business is distributing lumber, and I have to buy and sell based on that distribution model, which is a close-in business model. It's not a 3-month and 6-month business model. When I'm doing basis trades, I would look at the futures board and say, well, does it match up with what I can buy or sell March or May for, like Greg just did when you asked him about the $1,300 knives? That's a different problem. Different problem, different mindset.
Well, that's good, gentlemen. We're kind of up against a half an hour, and I'm respectful of your time. And Matt, I'm popping across the range tomorrow to come see you in the morning. Hopefully, I can put it to 4-wheel drive, and I'm going to pop around Portland. I'm enjoying the snow and Bend right now. But one thing we've been asked to do, and we're going to probably do, is do a separate thing during the week. Maybe include you and Greg, where we're just going to have a private small group of people get together, not an open forum like this, because there's a lot more information that we want to give people. But I think that has value to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to negotiate my contract though before we do
that.
Yeah,
well, we will. We'll renegotiate.
That's what you guys are doing tomorrow. Is you're going in there to try and lock Matt up. I mean,
Matt, I get my agent to call it.
Matt, I don't want to Gruden you, man. I may go back through your old emails from 20 years ago.
Oh, and no, he's already. You can pre-fire him.
If we're going to negotiate, I'm going back through the old server, man.
I'm pretty clean, man. I'm pretty clean. I don't cause a lot of problems like that. So
look,
go ahead and do that, Ashley.
If anybody's interested, I'm kind of putting together a separate minds of the industry thing where it's going to be it's going to have a fee or a charge to get on it, but we're going to get into depth even more stuff.
What?
That'll probably be worth doing.
You're gonna? You mean it's not free anymore?
Well, this is, but it's like the podcast where somebody goes, if you want to stick around for the really good stuff, you can sign up.
Oh,
yeah. Okay. We're gonna have to swipe up.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's
Materials
pretty
X
good.
Plus.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Look at mxlumber.com. Come to mxlumber.com. We'll get you signed up. And Matt, I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow over in
me too.
Portland. And thanks everybody. Appreciate your time as always.
All right.
All right,
Thanks,
buddy.
guys. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Yep, bye.
Hey, Ash. Ah, shit.